when I was being traditionally published, my first book deal was $50,000. I did 5 more deals. My final book deal was for $2,000.
How much money can an author expect to make on their first book? Let's say they have a publisher involved.
Well, publishing has changed so much since when I got into it in 2005. Back then, I will tell you, I'm always very tacky and open about money. I got paid $50,000 for my first book from HarperCollins. And I was devastated because I knew all these people who were making, getting hundreds of thousands of dollars. This was actually almost at the same time that Hollywood was paying a lot of money for spec scripts too. Now I hear about advances that are $5,000 to $10,000. Publishing is an even more broken business than Hollywood. The way publishing works is that they know they're going to really make the bulk of their money off of probably 1 or 2 books all year, and they're going to put all their marketing and all their promotion and all their efforts into those few books, and they consider everything else just a loss leader. They're just sort of throwing it out. 99% of books do not earn out their advance. So, and the way that works is, so I was paid $50,000. So then HarperCollins has a situation where they're going to spend $50,000 on, the editing and the cover and all of the things. And then once it starts to come in, then, you split your percentage with your publisher. I've never earned out. Most authors have never earned out. So obviously if you get a lower advance, you're going to earn out more quickly. But basically the way publishing works is there are these books that are, the 50 Shades of Grey, the Eat, Pray, Love, the Glennon Doyle books, whatever those are. And most of the population doesn't read. So for a book to hit, basically it has to hit a segment of the population that doesn't read, where people are going to be going to parties and someone will say, oh, did you read Eat, Pray, Love? Or did you read 50 Shades of Grey? And they're going to feel stupid that they haven't read it. So a book just goes crazy when people who don't even read books are reading it. And so those are the books. There used to be something called the mid-list author. The mid-list author would sell, 5,000 copies of a book, 8,000 copies of the book. Now it's just the millions and millions, or the people that are selling, books under 1,000 copies.
What about if you become a New York Times bestselling author? How does life change?
That is interesting because you can hit the New York Times bestseller list selling 3,000 copies. It all depends on what else is being released that week. And, the Bible has never hit the New York Times bestseller list because it's about the amount of sales in a particular week. And the New York Times list, as opposed to the Wall Street Journal list or the USA Today list, they admit that it is a sort of editorial decision. It's actually William Blatty who wrote The Exorcist. His second book, Legion, he sued the New York Times because he said, this was only briefly on the list. I know how many copies it sold. It went to court, and the New York Times said in court, this is actually an editorial decision. So that is something that they admitted in court. So the big misconception is that if you hit the New York Times list, you're set for life. Not at all true. I know so many New York Times bestselling authors who are completely broke, and I know people who have self-published books that have sold 200 copies that are living large. So I was never more broke than when I was a New York Times bestselling author.
Was that perception an eye-opener for you? I know you said that you thought once you sell these rights, once you get this book, life will be wonderful.
I think that publishing inspires more delusions than Hugh Grant movies. People go into it. I was one of them. You go in and you have this book and everyone says to you, don't get your hopes up. This doesn't happen for very many people. And you're like, yeah. It's going to be different for me. And I experienced it, and I have now witnessed probably hundreds of people I know who have done the same thing. And I can tell when I'm talking to them, and I try to, give them my gentle love of like, no, this doesn't work. Don't compare yourself to the exception, compare yourself to the rule. And they just kind of give me this look of like, no, it'll be different for me. So I have never been someone whose life has changed overnight as a result of anything. I know that does happen to people, but I also know people who had crazy hits out of the gate. Their first book went crazy, and they spend the rest of their career living in like the glory of their past. I wouldn't want that either. I want my greatest success to be in front of me, not behind me.
Right, I think it was Elizabeth Wurtzel, Prozac or Nation, and David Foster Wallace. Yeah, they had these hits right out of the gate.
And I know other people who are still alive who that happened to as well.
Right, and there's other things that come with it too, because I think then you're kind of always like sneered at in that world because you're the one that was the darling out of the gate, and I think that's a hard thing to live up to as well.
I think it is. Yeah. I think it is. I mean, yeah.
Right. But anyway, it's different. I know. I get it. It's going to be different for me. I understand.
Yes.
Right. It's always different. What if you self-publish? What is money like then?
Well, I will say when I was being traditionally published, my first book deal was $50,000. I did 5 more deals. My final book deal was for $2,000. $2,000. So it worked out to about, I guess, like a quarter of a penny a day for like my amount of work. No money comes from book sales. Like I will say this until I'm like blue in the face. So self-publishing, yes, you can make more money from book sales because your percentage is going to be higher, but never look at it as the book sales. I'm obsessed with like, what is the back end? So I write books now that bring attention to my company. They add to my credibility as a publisher, as an author, as all of these things. So yeah, I'll make like a couple $1,000s on book sales, but I can bring in hundreds of thousands of dollars in new clients. So I think the whole perception has to change when we're talking about money. I wanted to start a podcast called like Screw Book Sales. Like it's not about the book sales. It's about there's no better credibility builder. There's no better business card. There's no better way to say, I am an expert than to publish a book. So why would you do that? Be one of the world's experts and have everyone want to hire you and be worried about counting the pennies on the book sales. It just doesn't make sense.
When you talked about Bill Blatty or William Blatty, with The Exorcist, and then he had several other books, I believe, and you said there was this lawsuit. Back then, was it more what people expect, and it's drastically changed now?
Well, publishing, Jeff Bezos changed publishing. When self-publishing went from like your creepy uncle's book that was like the garage was filled with this book, he was always passing out at family reunions, that was self-publishing. When Amazon changed and they created KDP, where anybody could actually go in and publish a book, it changed everything. I mean, self-publishing isn't new. Stephen King has self-published. Jane Austen self-published. It's not new, but the way it can be done now, the level at which it can be done, it's indistinguishable from a traditionally published New York Times best-selling book. So the problem with that is that people go, great. I mean, we could in the next 10 minutes publish a book on Amazon. That doesn't mean it's going to be good. But so the distinction now isn't between what's traditionally published and what's self-published, but what's published at the highest level and what isn't published at the highest level.
What are the different ways that an author is paid?
So you mean with traditional or just in general?
Or self, yeah.
So if you're traditionally published, you're paid your advance, which is usually broken up into 3s, which is, here's the third, then the second third is when you turn it in, and then the third is when you release it. If you're self-published or you're paying a company to publish, you're gonna put the money out, and then it's up to you how you wanna make the money back. What we do for our clients, we'll put a QR code at the beginning of the book. If you put it at the beginning of the book, because of Amazon's look inside feature, people who don't even buy the book could theoretically get whatever it is. So people put QR codes on the beginning of their book. You can put it on the barcode on the back. You can put it throughout, and people do all sorts of things. There is a writer he's a marketer writer named Pat Flynn, who he has a book called Will It Fly? Great book, and it's all about like, is your business idea viable? He created a free course that there's links throughout the book to the free course. From that free course, the people who signed up, he sold them a paid course. And the person who helped him do that, I had on my podcast, and he said through that, he made $111,000, not from his full email list, just from the list of the people who read the book and signed up for the free course. I don't know many authors that are making $111,000 on their launch day, but that's the kind of thing that's possible.
What do you mean when you say you're not going to make money from book sales, so the book should be about your secret power?
I mean that people read a how-to book because they want to solve a problem. They want to know how to do something. And so a book should show somebody who wants to know how to do something, how they can do it. But it can at the same time show how much more complicated the thing is to do than they might have thought. So somebody who could afford to would then want to pay somebody to do it for them. And who better to pay than the person who wrote the book on the topic?
On top of the advance, what about royalties?
Well, you're talking to someone who never earned royalties, because royalties don't kick in until after they have paid out the advance. So that's why authors who just get no advance or very minimal advances can earn back. I don't know the exact percentages because it's never been relevant for me, but trust me, it's not in the author's favor.
So the more you get up front, almost like a film distribution deal, the better you are. Are you getting an accounting every month?
Yes. I mean, my accountings are terribly depressing. You get an account. I still think I get accountings on books of mine where they're like, no book sales for this month or whatever it is. But yeah, like I said, I just think looking at the book sales is a losing game.
Do you own the rights to all of your books?
I only own the rights to Party Girl and then How to Get Successful by Effing Up Your Life and Make Your Mess Your Memoir. I sold the rights to 5 of my books to Harper and then 1 to Simon & Schuster. With Party Girl, I was able to get the rights back, which was an incredible thing. Because I knew the movie was gonna get made, and I always hated the cover, and I just basically decided, well, HarperCollins doesn't care about this book. I really care about this book. When the book came out, Judith Regan had been fired in the worst scandal to ever hit publishing. So all these high hopes they had for the book, there wasn't, they talk in publishing about if your editor leaves to go to another house, you've been orphaned. And I always said it's like I was orphaned and the orphanage was built to the ground. There was no office anymore. So back then in 2007, bookstores mattered a lot. And the way publishers got books into bookstores is they would send sales representatives. There were no sales representatives. So the book was sort of DOA, even though there was all this buzz and all the movie rights and all of these things. In order to get the rights back, my contract stipulated that I got them back within 10 years, but we still had to get it official. And so it was very complicated. My lawyer sent letters to HarperCollins, but because the division was gone, there was no one to approve it. I had to get my agent involved. And then finally, at a certain point, I said, I don't care. I don't think Harper's gonna care if I re-release it. So I had my cover designer do this amazing cover. I decided I wanted to release it in September because it was Addiction Recovery Month. And I was like, you know what? They can come after me. Hey, it'll be good publicity if they actually care. And I already had plans to release the book. And the day before I get a letter, it's like, congratulations, you've got your rights back. And I'm like, thanks. Didn't even need it.
No scandal, darn, okay.
Yeah.
Is 10 years a common length of time?
I actually don't know. I don't know. I think when a publisher really values a book, that they're going to fight to keep it. But it was almost like they cared so little. That's why it was hard to get them back, because there was just no one who was even involved anymore.